Good evening, and welcome to the Selectmen's meeting on March 25th. To start off the meeting, we're going to go to executive session immediately and hopefully come into public session right around 7 o'clock. So I'll take a motion now to go into executive session.
You have it up there?
Oh, I'm looking at it. Sorry about that. Gotcha.
Can you read a check? I don't have my glasses
Move the
on.
Board of Selectmen vote
Sorry.
pursuant with the Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, clauses 2, to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to reconvene an open session thereafter.
Second.
To move to second, roll call vote. Ms. Napoli?
Aye.
Mr. Gerber? Aye. And Mr. Shuck?
Aye.
Up, Chuck.
Whatever. And Caldworth.
And Mr. Knox, yes. Executive session. Okay. Welcome back to the Board of Selectmen's meeting on March 25th, 2019. The times are way off, but on the agenda tonight, organizational pledge of allegiance and read the mail, department updates with the fire truck, District 6 hazmat truck, followed by the Conservation Commission with three things: review amended wetlands protection regulations, Kerrigan quick clean deed, Kinghorn conservation restrictions. After that, public input, members' input, followed by marijuana testing presentation, 410 Great Road. Scheduled for 7:30, hopefully getting back close to that. May 29th, annual and special town meeting, determine the order of articles that appear, direct posting, adopt recommendations on articles, followed by town building and space needs analyst working committee update. 8:40 interim town administrator talking about the town accountant minutes, and then back into executive session at the end of the meeting. Madam Clerk, pledge allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anthony, any email?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one thing. We received a letter from Mass Clean Water Trust, them in conjunction with the Mass DEP. This is regarding our SRF loan, SRF application with regards to the Littleton Commons Smart Sewer Project. So what this does is allows us to borrow money at below market costs. So as you can see in that second part of this slide, where we're borrowing at 1.5% when the rate, market rate is at 3.15. So that project has a potential savings of $4.5 million over the course of 20 years. So this was something that it was our goal to get as part of that project, and we're pleased that we did get that. And that's all I have for the mail.
Okay, moving right along to 3, the fire department hazmat truck. Chief?
So District 6 has reached out to inquire if we could house one of the small district hazmat trucks. Every district has a few of these vehicles. They're spread out strategically within the district. Currently, the vehicle's in Shirley. Shirley needs the space back for a vehicle of their own. And they're kind of on the very edge of the district. We're a little more better located right at the junction of Route 2 and 495. It's a good location in the district, and we currently do have some space available. Be for nothing more than the goodwill of, housing the truck for the state, as that's kind of what how the system works across the state. If there were anything that needed to be retrofitted for the vehicle, the state would take care of that in the facility. It's pretty simple. If at some point when we need the space back, we can request it, it be transferred to somebody else.
Just like Shirley's doing right now.
Exactly.
So for the public, what effect does this have on your personnel as far as them jumping in the truck? When would that ever happen, or if ever?
So they said about 95% of the time they would have somebody respond from the hazmat team to operate the vehicle. We currently have one member in our department that is part of the hazmat team. As long as he's in town and responding, odds are he'll be responding in the vehicle. But on the odd chance that it needs to be delivered to a scene, as long as we had a member available, they would respond to the scene, stay with the vehicle, and bring it back when they're done. It would be no different than us going mutual aid to another fire in another community, similar to now. So the liability, they would be, basically on the town's roll. The hazmat team would reimburse for either whichever costs more, the replacement or the individual taking the vehicle. The state will insure it, and all liability runs through them.
Is that true? The way I understood town council's letter is that all, their equipment is insured through them, but if our personnel is injured, it's our insurance that covers it.
Correct, right, I'm sorry, liability for the vehicle is through them. Right, it's no different now than us going mutual aid to another community. Our insurance covers all the members of our department if we were to go to Air, Groton, Westford, and that would be the same with this vehicle.
And same with being on the hazmat team, too.
Yeah, same
We
as being
cover
on the hazmat
111F.
team or the tech rescue team. You're covered by the town that you work for. The state doesn't cover you. So it's basically all covered under the mutual aid agreement.
And there's no way that we can get them to name us as additional insured under their policies? I mean, if, think of the worst case, something bad does happen, that ends up being a significant cost to us because it's a big hit against our insurance while we're doing something on behalf of the state hazmat team.
That would be for, if an individual was injured, yes, and that's no different than it is across the entire state for any town that serves in any capacity on any of these tech teams or responds to another community for a fire.
But the difference there is that Littleton gets something in return. I mean, consider mutual aid, right? We provide mutual aid, but we also receive mutual aid. So there's a give and take there.
Right.
All I see here is give.
And for the hazmat team, if we have incidents in town, which we do, they respond to our town with, the vehicles in town. So we are a user of it when we need it.
Similar to the NEMLEC team in the police department.
Exactly the same.
And there would be, I don't want to cut you off.
No.
There'd be a memorandum of understanding that was approved by town council that.
Yep, which you have in your packet.
Right. And council's comfortable with the MOU based upon the note that he sent to us. And states right in, the town understands that the town's insurance will cover our employees if they're injured by or when interacting with the truck. So, I see where you're coming from, Chase, but I think that,
It is pretty uniform across the state.
Did we even ask if they'll cover us as additional insured?
We did.
we did push back for them for a couple of things when this first came up 3-4 months ago.
Yeah, right. This was back in December, January.
Like the chief said and Chuck said, it's no different than NEMLEC. It's you risk that on any mutual aid that you have out there.
So Chief, you have one employee who's a member of the hazmat team currently?
That's
on
correct.
as part of your team. So what if that employee is not available? You can't just take another member of the team and have them respond to the call, correct? Because they're not part of the hazmat team, or what are the
So-
requirements there?
What we would set up, we'd have a little lockbox outside the back door, so that when they put out a page to everybody on the team, and they set it up so that, if somebody would typically always be available to go get the truck en route if they're passing by or in the area. And they would come, use the lockbox, and they would respond and take the truck. On the rare occasion that they didn't have anybody and they needed the truck, if we had an available member, we could deliver the truck for them.
Okay,
If we had an available member, it's
Right.
nothing that's mandatory for anything like that.
okay.
They would make other arrangements if we couldn't provide.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
Any input?
I mean, I'm not crazy about it, but I'll defer to the chief's recommendation.
And town council, too.
Well, town council's language was pretty explicit. as long as the town understands that the town insurance will cover our employees, It
Yeah.
I would not say it's their recommendation, they were simply highlighting the potentially biggest pitfall here.
Nothing else for motion?
Just one quick other, just a question. Will this put us in better light with, I mean, any grant applications or anything we go in, just saying we play nice with others, or,
Technically, no. Short answer, sorry.
that's fine?
You don't get any brownie points.
No. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you? That's
Exactly.
the golden rule
It is really just, to the goodwill.
of the district.
Yeah.
And we are part of the district.
Playing nice in the
And
sandbox.
somebody else has been providing that service up to this point. And
Correct.
It's kind of,
And now they
our
don't
turn.
have the space.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to authorize Chief Scott Wadzinski and Interim Town Administrator Anthony Ansaldi to execute on behalf of the town said memorandum of understanding between the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, Department of Fire Services, and the town of Littleton.
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Get a couple extra cars in my driveway tonight.
You need those kind of.
Item 4A, Conservation Commission. You're here for three different things.
Yeah. You want to take it? I'll do the first one. My name is Anna Mayer. I'm on the Conservation Commission. And I'd like to review the changes that we propose for the regulations, which were last revised in April 2018. So this is the first revision since then. And overall, we want to change items in 5 sections. And most of them are very small clarifications, but I'd like to go over the larger ones. The first one is section 1, which we're clarifying what a public interest is under the waiver program. And currently, it's not really defined, but, so we are clarifying that we lean toward, we don't exclude all of this, but we include public interest as an environmental public interest when significant net environmental improvement for a site in order to get a waiver for the regs to go within the 50-foot no-build zone. And the second change that we propose is in section 1.4, and we clarify that within the buffer zone, which is the 100-foot buffer zone, that limited projects can be allowed, and they are the same ones that are in the state regulations, and that minor projects are allowed in section 4.2, the same ones also in the state regulation. And section 6.1, we clarify that single-family homes do need to comply with the stormwater regulations to the maximum extent practicable, and not fully as it was before. It was implied that they have to comply fully with the stormwater regs, but now it is to the maximum extent practicable for a single-family home. Section 4.5 clarifies that the date of pre-existing structures or activities is prior to the first version of the regulations, August 8, 2016. And that is it. Any questions?
I'll open up to the board.
I'm just gonna ask a question relative to the residential impact of the stormwater regulations or the mass stormwater standards. So that's relative to if you have rainwater that's coming off of a roof, that you're directing it or redirecting it responsibly and not,
That's
I
correct.
mean, mass stormwater standards are pretty strict for us. We have to audit everywhere that any kind of stormwater is, no matter, we have to know where it's all going. So that's just basically saying that residents have to use good judgment. Sounds like, just don't,
Yes, and it's not all single-family homes, it's single-family homes that are over a certain square footage. and meet that requirement, and then they have to comply fully. And so that would mean they have a certain amount of impervious surfaces, and would have to handle and consider where they are putting the stormwater from their roofs and their driveway and all impervious surfaces. And that generally, the stormwater regs encourage keeping the stormwater on the property.
But in order to do that, imagine a big development, maybe they have an infiltration basin. It's just not practical to do that for a single-family lot, right? So by softening this just a touch for single-family houses to the extent practicable, the Conservation Commission will now be the arbiter of what is practical versus, in theory, being forced to hold single-family property owners to the absolute letter of the stormwater standards, which were not always written with the single-family home in mind. Is that a reasonably
Yeah,
accurate?
it's, most commonly over the last year, it's been either sort of a dry well, or if you know the Coltech system, sort of an underground infiltration systems, which surprised me when I was the engineer, how much they were fairly cheap. Engineering's a different thing, but to install them, so that's been the most common solution when it's needed.
Chris?
I have a question. Is this just for anything that has to come before conservation, or are you talking this is any new house in the town?
This is just something that's already in our jurisdiction,
Okay.
in the buffer zone.
I'm okay. I had
Got plans?
additional comments if it was gonna be something else.
Any other comments on this? Yes, sir.
Long 10 Grist Mill Road. Just a question to the chair, through the chair. Do we have any idea what the additional cost for engineering for a stormwater system on a single-family residential home would be? Just to make- I think if we're trying to keep things affordable, we might be increasing the cost, not just to the developer, but to the end user of the house. So curious what might be the cost for engineering.
Any idea?
I have no idea.
And it's only, again, it's only in the ones that are in the 100-foot buffer zone of a wetland.
And single-unit developments. So anything that's developing,
Just a single house.
yeah, just a single house. Anything more than that, which is frankly really where our affordable housing will come from, is multi-unit developments. Those are still
Those would be
need to
in it.
adhere by the stormwater standards.
And just to clarify, it's also, to narrow it even further, it has to be more than 1,000 square feet or 5% net increase of impervious area as a result of that home being built. So,
Just curious for the number, but thank you for that clarification and detail.
Mr. Stoddard, did you have an idea about the ballpark cost?
Based on my experience, it'd probably be an additional $3,000 for design of a stormwater plant. Because I'm assuming would be requiring to do a stormwater report.
It's sort of
Engineering.
a mini stormwater report. It's really just based on calculating what the impervious area, what the runoff is, and then designing, some sort of, usually, most commonly, an infiltration dry well
Yeah, it's
or
still
something.
about a $3,000
Yeah, it's-
increasing cost,
Safe estimate.
what I would charge.
Any other comments?
You want to give out your phone number, Chris?
No,
and this will
it's an
help
ethics
the
violation,
town
I can't work on it.
in the long run with this MS4 permitting.
That's where I was going with
Yeah.
my line of questioning. Thank you.
Sure.
Come on.
Anything else? Look for a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code Section 171, 7B, to approve the Conservation Commission's amended wetlands protection regulations, subject to approval as to form by Town Council.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. Next thing, you have a gift of land in Springfield Drive.
I don't know if you really needed to hear anything. There's a tiny piece of property, like .09 acres.
Yeah, it's right there.
I think.
Thanks, Sam.
So it's lot 16, lot 15 is already owned by the town, so it's just a little tiny lot, not being there. I walked it last fall, I think it was, and it's not an exciting piece of property, but it's not a dirty piece of property, so.
Is this the case where the people own the land and like have no use?
If I remember, I think she inherited it and was just, yeah, there's all these tiny lots all over Long Lake area.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And we already own 15. We, the town.
Any questions? Pretty straightforward.
Okay,
So,
is that, you can go.
move in accordance with Master General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, to approve the Conservation Commission's acceptance of a gift of land located on Springfield Drive, lots 5114 and 5115, as designated and shown on a plan entitled Map C of Long Lake, Town of Littleton, Middlesex County, Massachusetts, recorded with the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds and Book of Plans 161, page 28, from Helen E. Kerrigan.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And now we're on to
This land needs signatures.
Yeah, we'll do signatures, yep.
4C, Conservation Restriction, 12 Nagog Hill Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ray Lyons. I'm here representing Joe Kinghorn. He is building a house off of Nagog Hill Road. The property includes 7 vernal pools, so we have lots of jurisdiction from the Conservation Commission and the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. To get his building permit, he agreed to put a conservation restriction on most of this property. The restriction has gone through the approval process. The Conservation Commission has already approved and signed it, as has the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. To complete the process, we need the Selectmen's approval, and we need the Secretary of Environmental Affairs' signature as well. So I'm here tonight to ask you to approve this conservation restriction and to sign it. It's my understanding you have a motion from Town Council.
It is a large piece of land that they're donating. When you put it on a conservation restriction.
Correct. The total property is over 37 acres. About 6 acres will be not subject to the restriction. The remainder of the property will be subject to the restriction.
Salamanders, right?
Yes. 7 vernal pools. And, this is the time of year where they are getting ready to start moving from one to the other. So,
Challenge to permit this. It was on Conscom lately. The road coming in was a real challenge to sort of weave through the lot to get back to the actual building area.
What the footpath, or whatever it is, the cart path, that
I don't know. I don't remember what that term is.
it goes with the, almost, yeah. Any other questions on the board?
No.
From the public?
we've been preparing 2 copies of this. I believe you have 1 copy and I have the other. This way we can keep them safe. While it's sent off to Boston.
Like a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the conservation restriction from Joseph P. Kinghorn Jr. to the town of Littleton, acting by and through its Conservation Commission in accordance with the requirements provided in General Laws, Chapter 184, Section 32, as being in the public interest pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 184, Sections 31 through 33.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're supposed to be 7 o'clock, we're only a half hour behind right now. Any public input?
Yes.
Mr. Dennis?
Should I come up here or just stay here?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Demetra Taylor, 115 Taylor Street, Chair of the Reuben Hoare Library Board of Trustees. I'm here tonight to give you a fundraising update on how we're doing with the new library project. This past Friday and Saturday, we had our 2nd annual Reuben Hoare Library mini golf. And I'm pleased to announce that it was very successful. On Friday night, we had 150 attendees for our adult golf night. Among them was Senator Eldridge and Representative Arciero. And I want to thank those on the Selectmen who came out as well, and to all residents of the town that came out on Friday. And then on Saturday, we had over 300 rounds of golf played, a lot of families in and out of the library that day, 22 business sponsors, 9 restaurants donated food, and we had 85 and plus businesses and individuals who donated over 100 items for our silent auction and our raffle. In total, we raised $18,416 from this event. And we also just recently received a donor who has donated money to name a room, a study room in the new library, and that was for $5,000. So we are currently up to $650,000, a little bit over that, that we have raised in donations and pledges from individuals and whatnot.
It's
That's
fantastic.
excellent.
So thank you all for coming.
I can't imagine you made that much money. That's
It's
great.
incredible.
Somebody did a lot of work for those silent auctions. There were so many silent auctions.
Any other public input? Seeing none, members' input. Ms. Napoli?
Certainly, I just want to make people aware that the Littleton Station Working Group is going to be holding a public forum on April 5th, which is a Friday evening from 6:30 to 8, followed by a follow-up session on Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon. The Littleton Station Working Group is a group of members from the Planning Board, the Board of Selectmen, I think Master Plan, and we hired a consultant to come in. We're looking at the MBTA station, Taylor Street, Foster Street area, the possibilities for some growth and development in that area of town. So if people could make note of that so that they can have their voice be heard, that is Friday, April 5th, and Saturday, April 6th, at the Littleton Middle School.
Thank you.
I don't remember if I had mentioned this or not, but the Sudbury Valley trustees have closed on the Smith property, which is the property on Whitcomb, a little bit in Littleton, a little bit in Harvard. Couple $100,000 purchase that they raised the money for in conjunction with the Littleton Conservation Trust. And so my understanding is a grand opening is slated for this summer, but it's a beautiful piece of property that's, I don't know, 15, 20 acres, and will ultimately be connected to other pieces of open space. So that's now been acquired, and they're moving forward with that with the trust.
Do they have a plan? I know they submit a plan and
I would hope that they do. If they do, I'm just not aware of it.
During the summertime, I did take one of their tours on the, I guess, the south side, and wasn't able to go to the one that was held in August. But as a kid, I remember going up, there's a place called Black Pond. My brother used to go fishing, I used to go tag along with him up there. Nice land.
It is a beautiful piece of property.
Did it?
Yep, that's all I got.
I'm resisting my temptation to say something about when you were a kid, but I just want to echo Demetra's appreciation for the amount of businesses, local businesses that step up for the library. I know that, I'm not going to name names, individual companies, but I know that some of the folks and the trustees have reached out to us to help make connections, and our business community is very connected with all that we do in town, not just for the library, but for any number of things. Whenever we ask, it seems like they're there to deliver, and they are very much part of our Littleton community, so I just want to put that additional thank you out there. The only other thing I wanted to, well, a couple other things. Cindy, myself, Ed Mullen, and Anna from the planning board are working on putting together the adult use retail with Chris as well, plans moving forward. And our expectation is that by the April 8th meeting, we'll have a deliverable that, for the board to make a decision on, to determine how we want to proceed as a community. And lastly, keeping Mr. Mullen on the spot, Mr. Mullen's kind of taken on the responsibility of working with the Baker House, working with the Historical Commission, and
God bless you.
So just,
And Mr. Glady.
and Mr. Glady, sorry. He's not here, so just want to offer our appreciation for the time and effort that you put into that.
Talk about Mr. Glavy, I'd never mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, our chairman is not here tonight because he's ill. I also had a phone call from a person that attends almost all our meetings, Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders had an extreme problem with his back, and he wanted to be here to talk about things at town meeting, which I'll bring up later on, one of his things on Article 14, but why he's not here, because he's in pain right now.
I feel his pain.
Oh, and back to the library again, I think it's so important that people see the effort that you're going through to raise money on your own, as opposed to sitting back and saying, let's get the money from the state and the money from the town. And I think it's, to raise that much money, you should be proud, and it's a great step forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, moving on, we're on to 6A, the marijuana testing lab presentation.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have Shankar Gotham is here to make a presentation. He's looking at doing a testing lab. See it up here.
Welcome.
I have the slide, so you can just tell me when to flip from
All right.
slide to slide.
First of all, I would like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to present my lab concept. Is it okay if I stand?
You can stand or sit.
Really, whatever makes you most
Comfortable.
comfortable.
Just address your presentation through the chairman.
All right. So I registered the lab formally after I presented my LOI to the Board of Lieutenant. That's why the LOI didn't have the G7 Lab LLC. Basically, in this presentation, I'm basically going to talk about the whole company overview, quality policy, the capabilities of my analytical capabilities of my lab. I have put together a small layout, which is to scale, and then my contribution to local community, the steps I still have to follow to get all the permits, and then I'll take questions at the end of the presentation. So my goal is to run this lab as a full-service cannabis testing laboratory, which I will pursue for adult use and medicinal use with compliance from Cannabis Commission. That is the regulation up there, 935 CMR 500.160. The medicinal marijuana program used to be regulated by DPH, which is now handed over to Cannabis Commission. And during that time, DPH had published protocol for sampling and analysis of medicinal marijuana products, quality assurance program, and these will basically be my Bible. For somebody with chemistry background, if you go through these policies, they have written it out. It's made it so easier so that you don't actually have to think. They've even laid out when do they want you to run quality control on your instruments, what's the tolerance, what kind of reference methods are out there, what instruments you need to use to do all these testing, and these will basically be my Bible. So I have to get a host community agreement from the town of Littleton, from Board of Selectmen, and then I'll have to go to Planning Board for getting a special permit. I'll still have to consult with Board of Health, local law enforcement, and fire department at the end, and if any other applicable governing bodies would have authority over testing. Cultivation, selling, and distribution is not allowed by Cannabis Commission for any testing entities. The owners of testing entities are not allowed to have any interest in growing, selling, or distribution of cannabis. My team is basically, right now, it's me and my wife. I will be managing most of the technical and quality, and she will be looking at the finance and HR perspective of our company. And the plan is After we get the permits and start to build out, once the instruments are validated by me, we will hire 3 technologists and then 2 couriers, which are not mentioned here, for sample pickup from the client sites. So, a little bit about my background and how I came to the state of wanting to opening and running a lab myself. I have been mostly in a reference lab and a healthcare clinical chemistry lab last 10 years. And this presentation basically tells you where I've been working so far. And my specialty is basically clinical automation, mass spectrometry, lab development, rollout of newer technologies in lab, phasing out older instrumentation, bringing in new automation, basically bringing all the labs to the edge or to the current automation protocols. And I'm still doing this for big companies and big hospital labs. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to do something on my own when these instruments and these methods, I know how to configure this, I know how to run this test, I know how to validate these instruments, and the clinical regulations are so strict compared to what DPH has laid out for cannabis testing labs. It's not so relaxed, but compared to clinical regulations where human specimens are concerned, it's a lot more easier from my perspective to run that lab compared to a clinical testing lab. And I went to school in Minnesota. I'm not going to read everything out of the slides. My wife, she has an MBA from Monroe College. She's worked for New York State Audit, WellCare Health Insurance Company, McKesson and Change Healthcare, and she has about 5 years of experience in consulting business for healthcare information technology. So the lab will strictly adhere to all the laws and regulations laid out by Cannabis Commission in 935 CMR 500.160. We will be obtaining ISO 17025 2017 in plain language. It's the International Standard Organization lab testing lab protocols certification. And Cannabis Commission will not give you a permit until you are fully compliant with ISO 17025 2017. There is some debate about whether you could do a DPH certification instead, but I haven't gotten a clear answer from Cannabis Commission as of yet. We will be following all good laboratory practices, that's what GLP means. And one of the documents I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Quality Assurance Program Plan for Analytical Testing Laboratories, performing analysis of finished adult use and medicinal marijuana products and marijuana infused products. This is about 200 pages documents approximately, I think, and this is this manual is published by DPH, where it lays out the instrumentation, the reference method, the validation, the quality control, the tuning, what kind of data you need to have, what kind of chain of custody, what kind of reference method you need to use to get all these testing done, and these will be used as a guideline to do all the testing. General PPE, safety of personal protective equipment, storing of the volatile or fuming methanol, ethanol, all those liquids will be in well-ventilated, appropriate containers. Recently, Cannabis Commission, there was, I do not know if, I follow the news pretty well. So there was an event with one of the testing labs throwing or someone finding all of the tested vials in a garbage, and then there was a pretty big deal about that. So Cannabis Commission recently published or had a presentation about a guideline on how to manage the waste for marijuana producing facilities or labs. And they basically said if it's less than a ton a week, it's not banned from disposal, but should be stored in a secure location or locked containers until collected. And DEP regulations say it can be sent to any compost or AD facility in compliance with Mass DEP. Waste, ground up, mixed solid waste to render cannabis unusable, mixed material, food waste, manure, salt, kitty litter, coffee grounds can be sent to any solid waste facility in compliance with Mass DEP regulations. There is also an option of composting these things on site, which I will not be doing. So analytical capabilities, these are basically all the equipments that will be in the lab. Pesticides will be tested using liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, and there is a trend in chemist communities of calling triple quads LCMSMS. That just means there are 3 mass specs, but they still call it 2 mass specs. Technical jargons. Basically, metals will be tested using an instrument called ICP-MS. It's an ion-coupled plasma. It's also a mass spec. Bacterial contaminants will be done by PCR, qPCR, or aerobic plate count and ELISA. Cannabinoid profiling, HPLC or UPLC, which is just a high-pressure liquid chromatography. Residual solvents will be done by GCFID, and moisture calculation will be done by gravimetric scale. So this is 660 squared. It's drawn to scale. No architectural firm or any engineer was consulted. It's done by me. Just a basic state of the current layout. There is nothing in there right now. It's just plain space, and this.
Just ask a quick question, just relative to the building. We all know the building.
Yes, this is right on top of Jack's office.
Okay. So on the Great Road side,
Yes.
where there's a little bump out where there's a couple of parking spaces where
Yes,
Jack parks,
yes.
don't park in Jack's spot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go in that door, you go upstairs.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. You're right.
Which building is this?
410 Great Road, right behind the Conant Building. So if you're going up Great Road by heading towards Archer Mobile, on the right-hand side, there's a little bump out parking area, and there's a door on the right-hand side. There's a set of stairs in there. Jack's office is the leasing office. It's right on, it hangs out over the sidewalk.
So this is my future plan. There will be a small reception area. And then there will be a wall with restricted access. Those 3 are refrigerators. One's a freezer, 2 are refrigerators. It might not exactly be the same, but that's just to give you an idea. All these others are benches. So from the starting, it will be a photo-taking platform at first, a scale, and then a HPLC, a GCFID on the first 4 benches. This you see is a flow vent over here. There will be a laminar flow hood on there, underneath which will be a satellite waste accumulation area for organic waste and volatile waste, which will be separated. The sink will be clean sink for hand washing only. I do not know if a dirty sink will fit in there, but there is a plan to put in a dirty sink somewhere in that closet, where dirty sink by I mean no chemical waste will be put down the sink. It's just washing of glassware, pipettes, or gravimetric pipettes, glass pipettes that are used to measure liquids. And then this hood over here will be connected to ICP-MS as well. ICP-MS needs direct venting. And then the ICP-MS will be here, LCMS-MS will be here, PCR will be in that room. So I've basically laid it out step by step, where first, as soon as the sample comes in, you need to take a picture of it, then weigh it, so that the weight of the sample hasn't changed from the place it had left. And then it will be homogenized, meaning it will be mixed in a powder form using liquid nitrogen or some kind of homogenizing device. At the powder form, it will be digested by acetonitrile methanol, depending on the method, at which form the sample does not give out odor anymore. The plan is to have the laboratory doors open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but I want you all to understand there will be times when the instruments might be running overnight, or I might have people in there till 10, 11, even 12 p.m. May it require, because instruments can be programmed to run all night, and somebody can come in the morning and just release all the reports in the morning. So these are basically all the steps I still need to, they might not be in chronological order, but first, host community agreement with Littleton Board of Selectmen. Then planning, I'll have to go to planning board for a special permit. And I'll have to include Board of Health, local police, and local fire after the lab's built out, so that I am all within conformance of all protocols that are required. Then I'll fill out my application to the Cannabis Commission, validate my equipments, and hopefully a provisional license and a final license. Cannabis Commission has recently published all the host community agreements that it has received from all the cannabis related businesses. It's in their website, anyone can look at it. None of the labs host community agreement I've seen have that 3% thing. It's only applicable to registered marijuana dispensaries or retail sale, I think. And some of the labs host community agreements I saw had some kind of parking giving to the city, and some of them had testing services given to the city not to exceed amount of $8,000. And I was thinking, like, what can I do so that I can get involved in the community, or be a part of that community and somehow contribute to the city. But my first year will be just trying to get out of the water and pay for the instruments. So I am a pretty strong believer in education. Just because where I am today is only because it's possible because of my education. So I thought I would contribute for 2 scholarships in first year for a resident of Littleton, 1 male, 1 female, attending a college for STEM majors, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And then on second year to 5 year, I would make that double that to 2 males and 2 females, to be made to 4 total scholarship and $500 each, which could be used towards tuitions or book. We can decide if the town wants to make that decision to contribute or to make the decision of who gets the scholarship and receive applications, or I can do that myself too by receiving applications myself. However we want to do that is open to discussion. And leading to that, I would like to open the room for questions.
No, it works through
Oh,
here.
sorry. Board of Selectmen for questions.
Before I open to the whole board, can you explain exactly who uses your facility? Why do they go to your facility, and where you're getting your product from?
So, for anyone to sell either medicinal or recreational cannabis in any form in Massachusetts, this Cannabis Commission in Massachusetts has regulated them to test their soil, to test their flower, to test their plants for certain contaminants, certain metals like arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead. And in the flowers, potency, terpenes, pesticides, so that they're not putting like harmful substances, so that these consumers or these patients are not taking in all the contaminated stuff. So to answer your question, it will be registered marijuana dispensaries and people who are cultivating that need their product tested. But anyone who's curious, who's even bought a product, can come into the lab and submit sample and say, I want this tested for this and this. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I guess my only other question would be, how often would a facility have to do that? Say, I owned a facility.
Yes.
How often would I have to be tested?
There is a strict guideline in Cannabis Commission where at what part of your cultivation you need to test what. So in the beginning, you need to test soil and water. And once your planting or your flower is ripe or to a stage where it's harvested, then you need to test your plant.
Open up to the board. Chuck?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. I think that every day we get a new degree, and talking about the ICPMS and all the acronyms. We all knew what you meant. Maybe next presentation, if you could break it down a little bit and have some of those
I'm
acronyms
sorry,
spelled. No, it's,
I was trying my best to make it as watered down as possible.
inductively complex plasma mass spectrometry.
See, that is.
I knew they knew.
Yeah. I know you're all.
She's probably did.
But this, yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Joe was saying, this is something that is a requirement of in order for a dispensary or a cultivation site to distribute their product, they have to, some of the things that were put in place by the CCC is in fact testing labs. So this is just, I see taking an opportunity, there's a new industry, and you're taking a look at it and trying to better yourself, better the industry, and better our community by, some of the things that you're willing to put forward. One of the questions I did have coming into this was relative to the delivery of product to your facility. So you're gonna have 2 couriers that will be employed by
Yes.
G7?
Because some of the cultivation or dispensaries will want their products to be picked up, and that's the current trend by lab. The people who work in lab will have to have an active registration with Cannabis Commission. They will be called laboratory agents, and they're allowed to go to a cultivation site and grab a representative sample of their batch for them and bring it back to the lab and test it. So that will be wanted. So 2 of the people, courier, will be hired once I get my provisional license from me to go and pick up samples. And that vehicle will have to be GPS monitored 24/7. Not 2 people can leave the vehicle at the same time. They cannot make unnecessary stops from the site to the lab. So this is all laid out in the Cannabis Commission and DPH regulations, like every small thing is in there.
We answered the specific location within the mill. Talked about your Bible,
Yes.
waste, that's gonna be, it's a pretty open public area there, so there's a number of dumpsters that are there, and if you were gonna be storing out in the parking lot, I would.
It's not gonna be stored
It's all
out.
gonna
You're
be
not
internal.
allowed to. It has to be in the lab,
Perfect.
and when the waste people come, 2 people have to be there. That's also laid out in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot leave it with one person, and one person has to be there. You have to be under 24/7 constant surveillance. First, the Cannabis Commission said 2 different vendors have to be, because one vendor you could maybe get compromised. If you have 2 different vendors doing your security, maybe it won't be as compromised. But if you back it up with a generator, meaning if there's a power failure or somebody tries to cut power, you still have your security and your restricted access going on, and that's required. And
Redundancy.
everything is laid out, and I've read that document many times.
Can I keep going? What do you anticipate your capacity to be?
So, I have, in my professional experience, in one shift, processed 200 samples manually to 1,200 samples
Automated?
with automation. Only one person, 19 mass specs. That's the maximum I have done. I do not expect to have 200 or 300 samples. From my projection and my business planning, my first 3 to 6 months, I expect maybe 20 to 30 samples a day. And up to 45 to 50 samples a day, I wouldn't even need to hire those 3 technologists. I can program a liquid handling robot and have it do everything within 3 hours. I can process all those equipments, and then I can do the testing by myself without quitting my full-time job. I'm a clinical automation specialist. I design labs where one man can run 2.7 million tests a year, 3,500 to 4,000 samples a day in an automated system. You would be surprised with the kind of automation we do in the labs. When you go to a hospital and doctor takes your blood sample, if your results are normal, it's highly likely that nobody even looked at those results. And the automation rules worked, and if your results were normal, they were tested by the instrument and they came out and posted and doctor looked at your results, but no lab person actually might have seen your tube even. So I work in that kind of field, and I come from that kind of background, so volume never scares me. But to answer your question, I'm expecting about 20 to 30 samples a day. And the testing amount required, I didn't put it in there, it's less than 0.3 to 0.4 grams for all the testing.
How much product do you need to get a representative 0.3 to 0.4 grams?
0.3 to 0.4 grams is. You mean what would be the batch size?
How much are your couriers bringing in per sample versus?
Per batch, yeah, 0.3 to 0.4 grams. If they're doing a full suite of testing, like heavy metals, mycotoxins, and then some batches, if the batch is bigger, cannabis commissions want you to do a duplicate, so that you're not only trying to like represent one part and not others. So that might amount to 0.4 to 0.5 grams, but 0.3 grams is even enough for all the testing.
Thank you for the presentation, I appreciate it. I know we actually had mentioned during member updates that we do have a task force that we put together presently that's working on a form application, an invitation for proposals to receive applications of intent. Just come forward and request the license that you're looking for
Cindy, just
currently.
a clarification, that it's not under the retail, so this is under our existing bylaws, so that wouldn't pertain to what you guys are
So it
currently
wouldn't,
working
so we
on.
talked about that in.
I have town council here that can, Chris,
No,
that can,
so,
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, I think the only difference between, I think, what I understand the task force to be working on and what we're talking about right now is that there's a limit on retail, and that we're trying to establish a process
Right.
by which we would identify the best applicants for the retail licenses.
Right.
Because we don't want to award those to what might turn out to be, the not ideal candidate.
right,
Testing labs are different in the sense that there's no limit on the number of testing labs that can exist in town.
Right.
So it's, we want to make sure all the applicants know what they're doing.
Right.
Before they get either an HCA from you guys or a special permit from the planning board.
Right.
Certainly, but there's not that limit on the number that can
right.
exist.
And I realized that, and that was where I was gonna go, right, what I started to say, was I do know that, but there have been discussions amongst the task force about using the same method for other establishments in town. So we're still talking about that. even though I know we don't have a limited number of licenses for this type of use, but we have been talking about using the same methodology for people that come before us.
Because with any business, we want to make sure that we're getting a good business.
Ultimately, you're gonna have to determine, with any of these that go forward, you're gonna need to determine what goes into it, what are the criteria you look for in a host community agreement, so.
Right.
You know, to the extent you can lay those out ahead of time.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Right, I mean, and that's part of it, but it's also just as far as what information we're looking for, you know, background checks, resumes, business plan, marketing plan, financial records and things like that. Yeah, exactly. So we've been having those discussions as well.
Mill building's an interesting choice to run a laboratory. Talk to me a little bit about your plans for the build-outs, fire suppression, safety equipment, so on and so forth, given the fact that you're going to have a whole bunch of volatile solvents, flammable solvents, so on and so forth. Have you reached out to the police department yet? Do you know what that build-out is going to entail?
I have not reached out to police department. I have not reached out to fire department yet.
Okay.
That's my next thing to do on list. Volatiles will be stored on a metal vented cabinet where volatiles are need to be stored. And then electrical build out. I have already consulted my electric engineer friend. It will have to be isolated for that unit particularly, and metered out and backed up to a generator. So I have done that. And safety wise, you would need a fire suppression within 75 yards. But the unit is so small, if I put even one extinguisher, I'll be able to meet that requirement. But that is not how I plan to build it out. There will be at least 2 extinguishers within 10 to 15 feet of walking. But I do not anticipate on having any fire inside the lab at all, like no Bunsen burners, nothing. There will be, the only hottest thing in the lab will be the ICP-MS, which is plasma heated.
Which gets pretty damn hot.
Yeah, and that will be vented out of the building. So, and that all the BTUs will be calculated according to the space. And this is what I do for a living. Like automation plants produce a lot of BTUs too. So it's all in the works. Meaning, like after I get the planning board's permit, special permit, that's when the build out will start.
Talk to me a little bit about waste disposal. I honestly couldn't care less about the disposal of the waste cannabis. I'm much more concerned about the fact that the mill building is on a septic system. You've got a whole bunch of highly toxic analytical standards. You've got solvents all over the place. So what plumbing apparatus is going to go in to make sure that that doesn't end up in
So
the septic
there will
system?
be no plumbing apparatus for that. There will be a satellite collection area for liquid waste where all the hazmat liquids will be collected, and those will be contracted out to hazmat waste handlers.
That's an ideal structure. It's a good plan. I've never worked in a lab where something hasn't accidentally gone down a drain at one point or another.
There will be a safety plan. I mean, there will be, so every laboratory has a safety plan, and every laboratory has a spill cleanup kit. And if there's a hazmat, that can be contained like a small 5 mil to 10 mil contamination to like, well, the whole methanol bottle blew up and it's all over the floor and we need to call a hazmat crew. So that will be all in the plans, and they'll be in the plan to contact the fire department, police department, or the state hazmat team, whatever needs to be contacted at that plan. It will be all planned out.
Would you be amenable to, and this is just me talking, not
Yes.
the board, as part of your HCA, let's say 6 months to a year in or something like that, an independent audit by a health and safety inspector or something like that. My primary concern is that the mill building's an old building, the fire suppression, is going to be an issue. This is probably not the ideal location for an actual laboratory, the infrastructure that is a laboratory. And so my concern is with that, and frankly, not with the cannabis side of things.
So, to address your question, actually, there is already a laboratory at the Mill Building, New Advent Technologies, and it will be not any different from that New Advent. I have toured their laboratories. They are a contract federal laboratory. They do clinical, vet contracts from the federal government doing dissolution testing, and they have all the equipment I will be using too. So I don't think it's any different from Neo Advent Technologies, which already exist in the building.
Okay.
Just one more, does the Cannabis Control Commission require that they do a site inspection? A
Yes.
look prior to,
Yes.
is part of the application process for this?
So before
use?
they issue a final license, after they've given you a provisional license, they will give you a timeline as to when they will come in and do the final inspection. And unless they say commence testing, you cannot test. So from the time provisional license to the final license, that is your time to do last minute preparations, anything you need to take care of. Any pending things from Cannabis Commission application that they want you to address. And they will be on site, they will inspect it before they say, okay, to commence. And if they think the lab is not sufficient or ready to go, they will not let you.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Anything else, Turk?
Yes, it's probably going to be addressed when CCC comes in to do an audit of the location, but having spent a fair amount of time in that building, ADA compliance isn't paramount. It's not the most accessible building when you start getting up onto the second floor, third floor. So is that something you've considered?
Could you rephrase your question?
So ADA, having people with disabilities being able to get to the facility.
Yes.
I know that it's not the most straightforward, easy way
Easy
to, it's
way,
not the
yes.
easiest building to navigate around. So is ADA a consideration for you relative to the space? I'm not trying to talk you out of
No,
this space, and I don't want Jack watching at home and
Yeah.
mad at me for.
I haven't done an ADA compliant assessment of the location, but if the town wishes me to do so, I would go through that. And literally, I hadn't even thought about it myself. But I would look at it from an ADA point. You're right, the building isn't easy to navigate, but if you access it through the regular access on the parking lot side, and if you access it through the other side, there might be things that could be done for ADA, but I haven't done ADA assessment to my location, particular location. Yes.
Any questions from the public?
I'm curious about.
Can you just identify yourself?
Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill.
Thank you.
I always forget that. I'm curious about why you are choosing not to compost the compostable waste.
Just because my unit is very small, plus I wouldn't want my technologists to be, I'm going to put a air purifier in there, but because of the constant opening and closing, I do not want to contaminate any of my controls or anything. I don't want it to affect any of my testing parameters. Just because the targeting testing is very sensitive, and anything you have here can interfere with it. That's why I am not a big fan of composting it outside, although I would love to have composting.
We are hopefully going to have an anaerobic digester just down the road.
Any other questions? Chris, anything you want to add?
I just had one question. You spoke a couple times about the need to, I think, be venting various parts of your lab.
Correct,
presumably up to the roof.
correct.
Does the building and your space have the necessary HVAC connections that you need in order to be properly
Vented.
vented?
Yes, so there is a building venting in existence, which I've seen, but for my ICBMS and for my laminar flow hood, I'm not if that's gonna be sufficient. So I already have plans in place to have a motor and have enough flow to cover the whole area of my lab and enough BTUs coming out of the ICPMS and to cover my laminar flow hood and have it pumped out independently if needed, without having it connected to the building.
So where are you pumping it to?
To the roof.
Okay. Anthony, you have anything?
Demetra Taylor, Taylor Street. I haven't been following this, so I'm sorry if this has been asked in the past. Is this the first lab to approach the town to set up an area, or are there other labs currently looking at other areas?
This is the first, right?
This is the first.
Very first.
Okay.
Anything else? Board? Thank you very much.
I will say that I respect you for completing a degree at Winona State University, one of the coldest places I've ever been in my life.
Yes, we used to go out when it'd be -32 and.
You can walk across the Mississippi River.
Yeah,
It's
we'd laugh at the ATM and say, oh, it's -32.
a balmy -32. It's cold.
The ice would have to be broken out by one piece of equipment, and then the plows would come through because it would freeze so fast. A lot of ice fishing in the lake.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So we'll be in touch after when the committee gets together with their, the working group, yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Thank you.
I mean, it's, yeah, I think that's probably the best course
Yeah.
of action is, you've got a bunch of stuff that you're doing right now. Appreciate you coming forward and giving us this presentation. The working group will kind of take it, and three of the members that are on the working group are sitting here right now. It's Ms. Napoli, myself, and Mr. Mullins on the planning board. There's one other member of the planning board that's on the working group. So we'll be getting together and doing a presentation to the full, or the debriefing to the full Board of Selectmen, in all likelihood on April 8th. So at that point in time, this will likely be part of that conversation, all right, this conversation.
So the host community agreement would not be discussed until April 8th. Is that the next, would be the next step?
And
We're not even close to that.
yeah, I wouldn't want to speculate on what the next steps might be. Chris, maybe you can give me some advice here, or us some advice here as to, I mean, we could engage in conversations about an HCA right now, but we don't really have any parameters as to,
I think that's right, and I'll defer to the board on how it wants to handle that. But we could handle it any number of different ways. The board could, in theory, engage in a one-on-one negotiation with this applicant for an HCA for a testing lab in town. If the board wants to delegate to the working group some responsibility for coming up with how it might want to think about negotiating that HCA, you know, we can work through the working group to do that. So you could sort of kick it down another, sounds like 2 weeks, for some further thinking, or we could start talking about it now. But I mean, you've heard a long and detailed presentation tonight, and there's been a lot of information shared, and I know you've got town meeting coming up next, so
Right.
I don't know if tonight's the night to
So,
think about the
maybe
HCA.
maybe I can propose this, to the board, is Cindy and I are on the working group, so either the full working group can reach out and invite you to come, and, you know, we can kind of explain what we expect our process to be. We don't even have the process set yet, frankly, so to jump to an HCA right now would be a little premature. We do have the bylaw in place, but we don't, we don't really have any parameters within which to operate. That's what we're trying to work on, is put those parameters in place. So, Anthony's got your contact information, correct? So maybe, if that's okay with the board, Cindy and I and Anna can
I think that sounds fun.
continue the
Yeah.
conversation.
In the interim, one of the things I found really helpful looking at the retail was, I think Chris had provided them the retail HCA's from other communities. Whether the applicant would like to distribute it sounds like you've got a couple in your hands. If, Chris, you've got a couple that you think are
I spent some time.
particularly good or particularly bad, I would be interested in seeing those.
Well, interestingly, there aren't that many. There's a handful of testing labs that
Okay.
have currently been licensed, but not many. And the applicant may have one that I haven't seen, but I spent some time looking for what these HCA's actually look like. And I think the challenge with this, with an HCA for this kind of use, is with retail is fairly straightforward. The statute says that you can extract a community fee, but it can't be more than 3% of sales. Here, the applicant isn't going to actually have any actual sales. It's just going to be collecting a fee for the services rendered. So, in any event, the ones that I did find, there are 2 testing labs, I believe, in Framingham, and what they offered to the town, what the town apparently accepted, was a certain amount of in-kind services provided to the town over the course of a year.
That's the $8,000 worth of.
$8,000. And
Testing services.
which, there's a quote in one of the articles on HCA from the chief of police who said, I don't think we're actually going to use that very much, but, we didn't want to turn it down. So that's something that the town could ask for if it saw any value there. The idea of a charitable donation and a scholarship is another way that the town could go. But from the very, very limited amount of these that I've seen, it does seem as though the towns that have done this already have looked to something other than a payment of 3% of revenue or something like that for this kind of use.
If both the applicant and Chris, if you guys wouldn't mind to circulate those, so take a look at them,
Yeah.
that'd be very helpful.
Chris, are you finding that the information other communities are asking for this type of use are similar to the information that they're requesting for a retail use?
I think what we're seeing with retail use is that there is a significantly higher, again, there's more retail out there than there
Right.
was. It seems to be that with retail use, there's a significantly higher payment of actual money directly to the town than with the very small handful of
Right.
HCA's I've seen for testing.
Right. So, yeah, so aside from the HCA, but just as far as information that we can get from the applicant, just as far as a business plan, a security plan, a traffic plan, all of those things.
All things we can require in the HCA that they show us, either immediately up front or require that those plans be prepared as they move forward.
Okay.
In accordance with state regs. I mean, because all of the real requirements for those kinds of programs are going to be in this Cannabis Control Commission regulations. So
Okay.
we can certainly require that they either adhere to those or go above and beyond if there's something else we want to see.
Okay.
And, be done to the satisfaction of the police chief and the fire chief.
Right.
And everybody else.
Right.
in town who wants to take a look at it.
Okay.
I would say here we probably don't need a traffic control plan, given that it's essentially going to be just the
Right.
couriers.
Right,
but-
that was, right, exactly.
But the
But a
security
security
plan would be
plan,
good to see.
I think there's just a few additional things that we could get from the applicant that might be beneficial to us, based on the conversations we've already had with the working group.
Mr. Godum, just a question, Chris, you can chime in if you wish. With retail establishments and with cultivation sites, CCC is pretty specific as to, and our bylaws are pretty specific as to how close to certain types of schools, daycare centers, that kind of thing. I apologize, I haven't looked deeply into where the research labs can be located. I don't know if there's some restrictions as to whether or not within so many feet. I know that there were some schools, children's theater, batting cages, so things where children would congregate, I think was the way that the CCC addressed it, within the mill building. So those are the kinds of things we need to kind of vet. So, and I don't have those answers for you right now. I just didn't know if either of you had that information for us as a board.
I had initially picked the location only because it was within the right zoning within Littleton. And I had initially, when I introduced and asked a question, I think it was sometimes in January in a Board of Selectmen meeting, I heard somewhere along the lines of like a research lab or a testing lab will not apply to the buffer zone, and I had specifically asked that 500 feet buffer zone question to the Board of Selectmen. But like, as you mentioned earlier, you do not even have a whole procedure or, am I correct, Chris?
I'd have to double check that. I know we have a setback to several of the different kinds of marijuana establishments. I'm right now.
So that's some of the stuff that we can do as well, and if I can reach out to you and
Yes,
you guys can come
there
to
is
our.
in bylaws, there is a 500 feet buffer zone in town of Littleton with the
Okay.
bylaws. But I was told, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I might not, be, that those would only apply to retail.
That might be the case. That's the reason I'm asking the question.
I'll double check that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer.
He probably has such a small amount of,
Yeah, I
it
don't know.
wouldn't have any effect. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Special town meeting and annual town meeting. Anthony?
Yeah, so we have a few things to go over, Mr. Chairman. First being, there was some questions, an email going around with Article 8 on the annual town meeting. Article 8 had to do with the CIP projects. What's the one?
Yeah.
Clean Lakes Committee thought that we were looking for $100,000 of the Spec Pond Cell Tower funds to fund the MS4 permit. That wasn't the case. The MS4 permit was in the CIP plan when you went through that exercise with the spreadsheet. So that's being funded out of our regular CIP funds available for projects. They did, the Clean Lakes did, there was two items that were missed in that article, and I just think it was a cut and paste error. One's a project for the Mill Pond dredging, some funds there that they're looking for, and another one is Lake Metawanaki improvements. Corey Godfrey will be in next Selectmen's meeting to talk about those two projects. So in the meantime, what I'd like to do is just approve the amended, updated article to be inserted for Article 8. With regards to, it should say D and E, not C and E.
That is, yeah, that's something I did.
Let me just check that. Yeah, it is D and E. So here's the proposed motion on the bottom.
Any problems with anyone in that one? Just to add on D&E, which would be Mill Pond dredging and Lake Metawanaki.
And they'll be in next week to talk about it.
Yeah, so the only thing I would ask is that, and I think I responded to this on email, just that if they're coming in to talk about Mill Pond dredging, a lot of people are asking about that, what's going on. So
get that all the
if we can
time.
get a full update on that,
Sure.
just as much detail as possible, that would be helpful.
Sure. I'll tell Corey.
In fairness to the people down there, they've waited and waited and waited.
Oh, I think they may be waiting a bit longer. The Corps of Engineers is still dragging out the feasibility study.
And then I look for a motion.
You read it, Chuck? I can't see it.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to insert amended annual town meeting Article 8, adding sections D and E onto the warrant for the May 6, 2019 annual/special town meeting, subject to approval as to form by town council. Do we want to pick which one it is, annual or special?
It's the annual.
Okay, so the annual town meeting, subject to approval as to form by town council.
The second.
Motion's been made by Selectman DeCoste, second by Selectman Gerbic to insert these D and E on Article 8. Yeah, yeah. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you.
All right, so the next thing, Mr. Chairman, is to determine the order in which the articles appear. So I have a spreadsheet we can work off of.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question about an article?
You sure can.
Yeah, actually, is Krista, is he gone? He's gone.
Chris?
Yeah,
Oh, he?
you just left.
But Chris Stoddard's pretty smart, so maybe he can.
Oh, yeah, any Chris. And actually, Demetra's here, so I can ask her as well. And on the library, Article 5, it says, therefore, the town votes to borrow the sum of $1,500,000 or any other sum of money to be expended by the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. I was just curious about the "or any other sum of money" language in that, because it kind of leaves it open-ended. Because it could be, does that mean it could be more than 1.5? Could be less than 1.5?
We weren't going to ask above 1.5.
Okay.
But are you saying that we should probably just say?
Well, just the way it's worded,
Unless that's like some
I think it's Keith legal.
legal, aspect or something that we
Right.
always do with those, maybe that's what it is.
I don't
But that
know.
does seem,
it's just,
Odd on its
it
face.
leaves some wiggle room there.
Yeah, I'll
got a guy
ask.
who might have an answer back there.
I know it's worded strangely, that it's not to exceed the 1.5. You could actually borrow less than the 1.5.
Right.
Oh, so what you're saying is, or any other sum of money less than 1.5?
Right.
That's what it's supposed to be.
That's the intent, right? But that's not,
Parenthetically, we could put after that, we could not to exceed, right?
No, if need be.
Well,
I just think the way it's
confusing to us,
worded-
It'd be confusing to people that go to town meeting.
right.
I think parenthetically, after the word money, you put not to exceed 1.5 million. Steve, does that seem like it's out of line, or
Legalese,
you don't specialize in that?
Chris could have told
what does the other Chris say?
I'll
you. The
tell
other
you.
Chris.
I think it's okay. I'm guessing this isn't the first time it's been worded that way.
I'm sure it has.
There is one important fail-safe there, and that is that the Board of Selectmen would still have to vote to appropriate it if it was.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I just think, just caught my eye.
Can you see if there's any others?
Anthony, how were these set up originally that we have in front of us? Was it done in any specialized, oh, is this,
This
Do
was
we
the
use a
orders.
formula to do this?
It's what we used from prior years, so, and then the voter petition article had enough signatures to be put on for the special. So, then we put the senior center stabilization fund. That's a $3 million article. We figured put that before the voter petition article, and maybe that voter petition article wouldn't be necessary if Article 6 passed. So that was kind of the thought process there in talking with Keith.
So But there is no dollar amount stated in Article 6?
Yeah, there is,
Draft.
in your book.
In the book there is now.
So that's,
Not in the draft that we got electronic.
no, that
Right.
was, it's a fluid document, and it was changing by the minute
And it
today.
leaked?
And it leaked, yeah. So, yeah, that was
Thank you.
duly noted last time, we corrected it
Okay.
this time.
And change the,
We changed, yeah,
thank you.
yep.
All right, good.
So the board members see any need to change how it's set up right now?
The motion calls it this is the first time I've seen this phrasing, although perhaps I haven't looked closely enough. The Senior Center Stabilization Fund, do we need to create that fund before we put money into the Senior Center Stabilization Fund? Or is the Senior Center Stabilization?
It's within the capital stabilization fund,
Okay,
but it's earmarked,
gotcha.
correct?
Article 6 establishes the fund.
Okay.
In motion, you'll see it's moving from capital stabilization to this new fund.
And so it establishes the fund as well as funds the fund? Okay.
The motion will fund.
Oh, there, I missed it, it was underneath the
Yep.
draft, to
Yeah,
create a, got it. I mean, my sense on the order is I don't particularly like to play games with the order any more than we have to. I don't see anything wrong with this order, seems reasonable.
I'm fine with it. too.
Yeah, I don't see anything, nothing's jumping out at me.
You don't have a special article you want to move up front?
Well, I mean, that's it, right? You know, it's, you can play all kinds of games, but fundamentally it's zero sum. Anything that we move up means something else gets moved back, and
The, I don't know. I think that the Neshoba Valley Tech School Building Project,
19?
are we still looking, we're on to
I'm sorry.
the town meeting?
But yeah, so we're, yeah, special, I don't see any reason for dancing there. I'm sorry, I have moved on. I thought,
I was too.
Oh,
It was a
sorry.
nice dance, too.
you know, two-step. But I subscribe to the same philosophy, though. They're kind of established, but I do feel that, like, the Neshoba Valley Tech High School Building Project, I think that is something that should come before a voter petition for Whitcomb Ave area field and grows.
I would be happy to move the Neshoba Valley Tech one, essentially wherever the superintendent could be there to speak to it. You know, I mean, presumably, we have a captive town meeting audience now. It gets smaller over time.
That's my point, yeah.
Yeah,
But if-
that one is unique in that sense. We have a particular person who we need to come and speak to.
So in all likelihood, she is not going to be here, the business manager will be here.
Okay.
So I think we're okay, I think we're covered on that, and Charlie will be here as well. Because I think she does have a conflict with, is it Westford or Chelmsford? I think.
Oh, yeah, she did say that.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So on the annual, as you can see, that they were grouped by, the financial articles were being 3 through 15.
It's kind of a formula we've used in the past.
Yeah, and the 2/3, yeah, exactly. So you,
Yep.
whatever you,
Well, if you're going to do anything in that one, take 19 and put it in front of the voter petition. If you make that.
the reason why, just to explain, the rationale behind putting 17 is just
Oh, right.
because they're both water,
Yep.
and it just kind of, for Littleton Water Department, yeah.
Why don't we jump 19 up in front of
16?
16?
And then 16 and 17 stay in
So this
place.
would be the new 16, and then we're basically just dropping everything down, 17, 18.
There's a good chance some of
19.
these are gonna they're gonna go with the call of the article.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I mean, it's,
You're saying something like this, Chase?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
just slide everything
Particularly
down.
because we can't predict well how long 17, what our 16, 17, and 18 will take to debate. So I'd hate to keep
Yeah, and like Chuck says,
superintendent or her representative.
Right.
like Chuck said, that could be called with the article,
Yeah.
call the article, so. But, yeah, that's fine, if we can switch that around like that.
Otherwise, I really, aside from.
It's a good suggestion.
I like you trying to group them. The only voter petition, it's more power to anybody that wants to do a voter petition, get the signatures and come, it's the form of government that we have. I kind of feel like the town business, the stuff that we put forward should come before a voter petition. And whether or not that's fair, I'm not sure, is with voter petitions going at the end of the night. If you feel strongly enough about getting the signatures and
Yeah,
going
no,
out.
no,
I mean,
it's
I
up to the
I
board.
appreciate that we have the quirk voter petition at the front end of the section in which it typically fits. It's still gonna be late, but again, it's zero sum. If we move that up to the front, we just push everything else back.
I'm with you.
Right.
So again, not gonna die on the hill for any of it, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on.
So we'll leave the rest of it the way it is.
Yeah. I like it.
So
I wanna see who sticks around to fight for Article 23. It's Tim's turn.
So where's Article 26?
Tim's.
What's 26?
Article 26 was the Board of Selectmen stipend.
She's never made that. Have to wait for the fall.
The
We'll put
laptop
it
right
in,
in front of you, kid.
we'll put it in for retro in the fall.
Well, we're doing retro, why do we
Let's do
stop?
a salary study.
Actually, we'll do a retro back. Joe, when did you start? So we'll owe you a lot of money.
No, Anthony's getting salty.
That's, I like that
No, it's, he
idea.
gets extra money. Yeah, retro for,
The town has that much money.
I can retire then.
that's it. All right, so the motion then is with the proposed change.
You've got the change?
Yes, there's one that Chase had mentioned, so I'll shoot that to Keith.
You got it, Squints?
We're just gonna say is modified, right?
Right.
Yep. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the order in which the articles appear on the warrants for the May 6, 2019 annual and special town meetings as modified, and to direct that the constable post said warrants forthwith.
Second.
Motion's been made by Selectman Appel and seconded by Selectman DeCoste. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that's done.
Should use the word forthwith more.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Certainly under.
It's a good word.
Just for the record. I
Use
did
it a
write
lot
that
at
in.
work.
Selectmen
Oh,
stipend.
it's right there.
Let me see.
It's on my iPad. I wrote it in red.
Email that to me.
As amended.
As amended.
Article 26. I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, why not? All right, so the last thing is selectmen recommendations. You have this meeting and you have the next meeting to do your recommendations, so I don't know if you want to go through, starting at the special that I have up there, and go through one by one and do your recommendations, or?
There's probably no reason not to do them tonight.
The only,
Some of them are.
Should we wait for Paul?
I think we should wait for Paul.
Wait for Paul?
Yeah, I think we
That would be my
should.
only reservation, is not having the chairman here, the real chairman.
Which one is some of them? Like
I mean,
1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
I mean, it's gonna take us seconds to do that, Paul's
Yeah,
here too,
all right.
so just.
Yeah, right, I mean, we could do the perfunctory ones, but they'll be perfunctory next time, too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then we'll hold off on those.
That also gives particular proponents or opponents of something an opportunity to
Yeah, so
be here.
next week, you'll have, next meeting, you'll have the last voter petition article with regard to the Whitcomb. He'll be in to talk about his article, because that came in after everybody else had talked about theirs. And we do have, Kent is here. Do you want to talk, are you going to talk about something tonight, or no?
He just can't get enough of,
The home rule petition?
he's here.
Want to just give an overview, Kent?
Real brief,
Real brief.
yeah. So, and I don't know
I was gonna question this, real brief.
the language yet. I'm gonna try.
It just came in this afternoon, it'll be forwarded to the selectmen after.
Yeah, so
Lofty goal.
we've been working on the main piece for town meeting, which is, at this point, it's a 4-page document, which is the home, well, it's kind of grown, I guess, with comments, it's around 5. But it's the home rule petition that'll be the foundation for the sewer program, which is obviously, I think it's Article 21, the way you have it set up right now. The goal of this is to give Littleton the ability to do the sewer program the way
that Littleton has chosen to with the smart sewer program as the set. Some of the things that are unusual with your program are the things that have to be covered in the home rule petition, including the opt-in, opt-out. And if you think back probably about a month and a half, we made a presentation about the opt-in, opt-out program, and we gave you a memo, and in that memo, there's a lot of things about the state laws that govern the sewer programs in most communities. And as part of this, the town would adopt a number of those state laws that are applicable, but we would also adopt policies or ask the legislature to authorize policies that would be slightly different. The primary ones of those are things like the opt-in, opt-out, the ability to draw a district and then let people actually pop back out of that district, and then also establish the method by which you would then be able to change the boundaries of that district over time through town meeting, after approval by the Board of Selectmen. So there's some very basic pieces that fit into this, but there's a lot of little building block language, which is why it turns into about a 4-page document when we get to it. So,
Okay.
as Anthony said, we put together a document, went back and forth with some discussion with legal counsel last week. Legal counsel just got us an updated draft this afternoon.
Then it just forwarded to the selectmen.
You'll get a chance to see it. We're still in discussion on the specifics of the language. We have a few more comments ourselves on it that we'll go back and forth with legal counsel over the next couple of days. And we expect, barring specific questions, it'll be pretty much ready to go. The language draws heavily on other home rule petitions that have been done for systems here and there, various pieces. It's not brand-new language, but the combination of all the components is actually very unique. There's only one or two systems that have tried to do most of the things that are similar. Provincetown was the one that first did the checkerboard sewering, where your former administrator, Keith, was administrator at the time. So there's some language draw from a number of different places that gives you the background to be able to do those. But it's pretty specific language, and it's going to take a little bit of reading to do that. So the big issues in it you'll see are the underpinnings becoming the select board as a decision-making body would also become a sewer commission. You would act in a certain role, and when you make decisions on behalf of the sewer system, you would make decisions as a sewer commission. And then from there, administration of the system is all laid out. So, I expect, like I said, that the total language will be available in a couple of days, but you have at least a draft at this point to ask questions.
Any question?
I haven't had a chance to ask this question of you, Kent. Since the Board of Selectmen legally will be the sewer commission, do we have the opportunity to delegate that to a?
Yes.
Okay.
Or assigning.
Right, or assign it. I mean, frankly, I think we're making a mistake. If we are the actual sewer commission, it's one thing if we ultimately sign off on what the sewer commission requests. But
This gives you broad opportunity to reformat certain practices that will happen. One of the things it does do is it also gives you the opportunity to establish policy. Once it gets down to the nitty-gritty of things like rules and regulations for your system, those things aren't things that the legislature needs to bless, and they're not specific to town. Like many town policies, policy gets set locally. And so you need a decision-making board to set those policies in place. Once you do that, things like activities of that nature would be able to be.
So we can write the policy that says the sewer committee, the sewer commission that we assign can do 9 out of these things, just independently go do them, and 1 out of those 10 things.
There are home rule
we've
petitions
gotta
that
bless.
that would establish specifics. If you knew right now you wanted to establish a certain specific board, you could do it. A lot of sewer commissions are established in these types of petitions when you actually have a district and you want a district commission. But traditionally, you only do that if you want to grant them broad powers, like the district commissions in a lot of places actually get the powers of control over land, condemnation, the ability to levy taxes, things like that. You don't need to do that. In this case, you're talking about a district that will be essentially a part of the town. It's a district in nature because of the fact that we're trying to control the area that gets sued.
Okay.
So you'll have significantly good breadth of power within the system that we set up.
Thank you.
Other than wordsmithing, we should be good. So, thank you.
Let's go.
He held true to his word, it was brief.
I was gonna say something, but not. Anything else, Anthony, on this?
No, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
The only thing, the board, Mr. Sanders did send me an email yesterday, and I was working on Sunday and all day today, and I haven't really got to it. On Article 14, he's suggesting that work-off abatement program for senior citizens and veterans, and the veterans part be increased from 7,000 to 10,000. And that's why he wanted to be here tonight, but obviously not feeling well. But is that something we can talk about later?
Well, do we have available funds to do that, Steve? Or would we have to reduce the?
We set the budget already.
It comes out of the overlay. I don't think the veteran piece has even come close to using the whole 7,000.
Is it 7? We gotta figure out a way to put draft across where it doesn't bullet out
I know,
anything.
I know.
It's gotta be send to the back, send to the front.
I know,
whatever, you
it's-
it's the Word 101.
Steve, can you find out for me how much has
Is that 7,000?
been used in the past? We'll just let it go for now.
Yeah.
And frankly, if we needed to do some sort of a shift, what lies before us, just fall town meeting? Or would we be able to do something, if we had an influx of veterans that were interested?
It would come out of the overlay, so the assessors would have to vote for it.
But we could do it between now and the next town meeting. Yeah, that's, good, good. Good. Sorry, I think you just answered that question, but I was asleep. Thank you, Steve.
So Anthony, we all set with that?
Yes.
So we move on to number 8. Town Building and Space Needs Analysis Working Group update.
Want to run with it, or you want to?
There's no paperwork on this, right?
No.
No, there's no supporting materials. So we had a conference with the OPM and the architects last week. And the contracts, as far as the scope of work is concerned, they're coming back with proposals for us. And they've been given the initiative of taking a look at the buildings to determine where our highest and best use would be. So they are hoping to get back to us. I think we said April 1st as a target date for them to get back to us with information so we can bring it back to the Space Needs Working Group.
Right.
And then we also discussed at the down Friday, just to,
So we're going to form a working group within the working group to work directly with the architects, just
specific stakeholders.
specific stakeholders from departments located within this building. Basically, Chuck, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, departments, a member from the Council on Aging, who's already, and they're already appointed to the board, so these are already people on the working group. Member from the COA, Park and Rec, and then the school department. Just to pare it down, because the working group is very large, but to save time and especially money with the town, because once we do sign on the architects, they are on the clock. And so what's going to happen is this working group will work directly with the architects, given the charge that we've assigned to them, and then they'll report back to the Space Needs Working Group as a whole, and we'll certainly keep the Board of Selectmen in the loop on that process as it goes forward.
Time frame at all?
Timeframe? Obviously, it's not going to be for this town meeting. Our goal is to have something to present at the fall town meeting.
Right.
So who's the, called the-
LLB is the firm that we
I'm sorry, the small working group?
Oh,
The
so-
composition of it?
Yep, so it's, it would be Marge Payne is the Council on Aging representative. Park and Rec is
Kevin Matrano.
Kevin Matrano, and then yeah.
Matt, I'm sorry, Matt
For the
House School
school,
Committee.
yeah, the school department. And I had a talk, Mark Rombacher is the representative from the library, and he was fine with not being part of the working group, just because we're actually sharing the same OPM,
Okay.
the Space Needs Working Group and the library, so he was perfectly fine and comfortable with not being part of that.
Like Kevin Heffernan.
Yeah.
and being
Yeah,
And then,
I'll be representing it.
yeah, and if Chuck can't make it, then I'll just step in.
Tag team.
Yep.
sounds good.
How does the passage of, possible passage of Article 8 in the special town meeting affect the work you're doing?
So Article 8 is the $3 million senior center stabilization. It,
Not the stabilization, the one that,
That's the DCU voter petition.
the voter petition.
Oh,
uh,
kind of,
well, I'm not, I wish Chris was still here. I'm not sure that we can pass that on town meeting floor, because we can't purchase a specific building. Chapter 30,
30B. Yep.
30B.
Well, I mean,
It forces our hand a bit, I guess, and then we have to figure out, I see it going a couple different ways. Perhaps we end up having to put out a bid, include that building in it, see if anything else comes back, and then take it from there. I guess it
It would
just
take,
forces our hand.
yeah, it would take another, this article in itself, we couldn't do anything with. It would take another article at town meeting in the fall to really do something as a result of this article, so,
several of the voter petitions are that way, where a voter petition simply can't be written in a way to compel us to do certain things. Certainly, they send a pretty strong message from the electorate about what we darn well better do, so.
right.
Well, the reason I ask is because the question comes up all the time.
So the voter petition is 7, and the senior center stabilization is 6 on special. So if 6 gets passed, and we earmark the $3 million, it would take another vote for us to move that money out of that stabilization in order to do something if we were to
right.
move forward and be able to do whatever we need to do in order to purchase a building.
Right.
Right. So
6
you
is
go back
more,
to the fall town meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Either way, we're going to fall town meeting.
Right.
That's the answer to your question. Yeah. It can-
I think 6 is more in line with the objective of the Space Needs Working Group.
I believe so.
Yeah.
It gives us the flexibility of being able to
Right,
pivot.
yep.
I said it was Article 8, there's no Article 8.
Yeah. This was item 8 on the agenda, that's what threw you off, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Okay, is that it for the? Mm-hmm. Okay. 9A, Town Accountant Update.
Steve, town accountant,
Yeah, Steve's still here for that.
thank you. Thank you. Nice job.
Good night.
Apparently they've seen this show before, Steve? Apparently they've seen this show before?
I guess so.
Pilot's intrigued, though. Pilot's intrigued.
I'm asleep.
It's
Makes
a
two of
packed
us.
house for you.
The consultant is in, she's been, this is the second week they've been here. They found certain things that we probably could have done differently at setup, it's things that they've seen in other towns. The senior's gonna be in on Thursday to just talk to me about some of the things they've seen. They're also meeting with the school department to talk about their chart of accounts, because there's certain things that they think could streamline things better with the schools, the way the chart was set up there, so. It's a lot of things that they're looking at right now.
Who is the consultant?
It's a subsidiary of Powers and Sullivan's, it's CLA.
Oh, the auditors? Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
it's the
so-
brother, so.
Okay. So,
So they have.
silver lining, I guess, right? There's some opportunity for some changes.
Opportunity for some changes, but it also, you know, it's an expensive opportunity to look at changes. Because they are pricey. And again, I know Anthony and I are just waiting for the board to make their decision about which direction we're gonna move in. Whether it's just gonna be an accountant, whether it's gonna be an accountant, finance director. It's gonna be a while before that body gets here, no matter which way we decide. But
Right.
we can't keep putting it off like this. I mean, at some point, we're gonna have to tell them to go away, because we're gonna run out of money.
What is the chair, what does Paul have to say about this?
The chair's expressed that he'd like to see it as the town accountant position.
What does he want to put on a town, on a meeting? I guess
You
what
know,
I want to have is more than just,
You know, it's discussion dependent.
I know
Yeah.
he's expressed interest in having Nina brought into this somehow to help her try and make a decision too, but we really need to sit down with her if she's gonna be involved in any
It's,
stuff.
it's 2 months before Nina gets here, and then it's a month advertising, and then it's summer, it's just, it's
Finding
just,
somebody, it's,
I think we can coordinate that, and that's that's part of a conversation that we had when we were finalizing in negotiations with Nina. And I think that,
She expressed her availability.
Yeah, I'm not worried about her participating if we ask her to participate.
right, I think she needs to participate.
yeah, she did, we were emailing, so she does want to sit down with the finance team member. It's just you now, I know, Steve. So maybe I can, maybe I'll shoot Nina an email, see if she's available, and then we can have some conversation with her.
I mean, really, when we distill this down, it's a binary choice, right? Either we hire a town accountant or we hire a town accountant / finance director,
exactly.
right? And if I understand this correctly, Steve, but you and I haven't spoken about it, you would be willing to take on the finance director role for a period of time?
If need be, sure,
Need be.
absolutely. Not that I wanna do it, but I'll certainly do it. Go team.
Honestly, I don't see why we don't just cut loose put out the posting for the town accountant. Let's address the need immediately in front of us. And with the town accountant, Steve can take on the role as the finance director. We get that process moving. It's a long time to get all those pieces moving. But I don't think when we hire a town accountant, we shy away from someone who may be our potential finance director.
I think Joe and Paul were in talking with me a couple of weeks ago. And that's one of the things we discussed is maybe when we put the ad out there, saying how the position could lead to becoming a
Yeah.
finance director.
The potential to evolve into.
Yeah,
Exactly. We want someone who can grow in.
that also affects the level of expertise you may be seeing too. If it's just a town accountant that we're advertising for, we could get a lot of applications in from assistant town accountants where they're coming in and now we're training them and seeing if they're gonna be up to snuff to get there. So that's the con of doing that. The other side of it is, you're gonna be looking for a treasurer within the next 2 years. You can make your decision then. You're gonna look for a treasurer, finance director, or just a treasurer and let them battle it out for finance director. That's a decision that you need to make.
I also think that if we put this out there and we word the application correctly, and frankly, we asked Anthony and Steve and our other high-level staff to shop it around and make sure that it's understood that this person could be the finance director, we see what applicants come in. I mean, if they all come in and they're purely accountants and they're never going to be finance directors, okay. If we get a third of the applicant pool are potential future finance directors and 2/3 are accountants, then we look at it and we look at it hard and decide at that time. Do
Yeah,
we
and it's
want to
fine.
hire somebody who could be the next finance director or not?
That's what we were talking about, that's, the conversation was,
Be the next treasurer.
do we go out and advertise that finance director and see what we get? If they don't meet it, then, it just becomes the accountant position. I don't know,
I mean, what happens if,
Extending it even.
I know, we tossed around, what's the
borrow it.
best? We could do the accountant and maybe, like Steve said, just get a bunch of assistants. We could do the finance director and, maybe we don't get finance director quality either.
We can speculate all day long.
Yeah,
The
we
thing
just gotta
that
do something, yeah.
personnel board's meeting Thursday morning, and this is on the agenda there too. We graded the position once, it came in at a grade 11. I really feel it probably should be more of a grade 12 position.
Yeah.
We're looking at some comps that were out in towns that are looking for accountants right now. The salary is more like starting at mid-11 to a high at the mid-12, so it's like in between our thing. Rockland is going out, it's a little bigger town than we are, they're going out for a town accountant at $95,000. And it's been out there a little bit, so. It may not fit scoring-wise, but I think we're gonna need to go out there to attract a good person for this, we're gonna have to pay.
Yeah, when it first came in, it was 11. Steve and I, we had that conversation. We don't think that that's gonna be enough.
To get the
Because we're still going through, a conversion. There's still a lot of munis work, as Steve explained, with the accounting firm that's finding some issues. So there's a lot of work still to do. It's gonna be really time-consuming for the next person.
Then can we put this in the agenda for the next meetings, because I want the chair to be here too, and so we can
Yeah,
actually
this
get
was
it.
something that we said we'll put on every meeting and just continue to update and see where yeah.
But I think if you could set something up to get Nina in here to at least talk, so I think she needs to be involved in the process somehow.
I mean, I would love to see, if at all possible, let's say we get Nina involved, two of you, Nina, get together. I would be interested in seeing what the town accountant job posting might look like, or the language you might use to try and draw in someone who could also be the finance director. I mean, that, somewhere down the road. Is there language out there that someone else has posted that we could rip off? Just wanted, is that
To give you
possible?
an idea, yeah.
And we'll find it.
Is that possible? What does it look like? Because it's easier to make the argument that
Right.
we're paying at a higher grade there, because it's a longer-term plan.
Yeah.
Did Newton fill theirs? Newton posted 61,893 to 63,750.
For an accountant? Yeah, but they also, I don't know if that's just an accountant within their finance department. This is more
Out of the
of a
comptroller department.
Yeah, so the comptroller would be equivalent to us going for a town accountant.
Okay.
So we all set with this? Okay, you want to move on to minutes before we go into
There's-
executive session?
There's actually no minutes. I had that out there. We were hoping to get them, and it didn't come to fruition, so there's no minutes to approve.
All right,
Diane,
I would look for a motion to go into executive session.
Back. Yes.
Can you read it, Chuck?
Vote of the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Master Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A, Clause 2, to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel and not to convene an open session thereafter. Requires a roll call vote.
Second.
Made and seconded. Ms. Napoli?
Aye.
Mr. Gerbeck? Mr. DeCoste?
Yes.
Mr. Knox? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, folks. April 8th, our next meeting?